Eccoci. Allora, buonasera, benvenuti. È con grande piacere che accogliamo nella nostra Centro di Studi Somali dell'Università di Roma Tre il Primo Ministro Abdiweli Mohamed Ali Gas. In visita, come sapete, avrete sentito anche dalle news alla televisione, in visita ufficiale presso il nostro governo. Dovrei parlarvi a lungo per presentarvi il nostro ospite, perché il suo curriculum è un curriculum molto ricco e prestigioso. Ho visto con grande gioia che in realtà però la sua carriera accademica è iniziata a Mogadiscio, presso l'Università Nazionale Somala, dove si è laureato nell'84, quindi quando noi eravamo in piena attività presso l'Università Nazionale Somala, dove abbiamo incominciato a lavorare noi del gruppo linguistico alla fine degli anni 70, nel 77-78. C'è qualcuno qui come il dottor Malesani che aveva iniziato l'avventura dell'Università Nazionale Somala fin dall'inizio. È stato per noi un'esperienza fondamentale ed è quindi per me una grande piacere vedere che poi ex allievi della quella che io ho considerato la nostra università, nostra Italo-Somala naturalmente, abbiano avuto l'opportunità e l'occasione di proseguire i loro studi e la loro formazione in prestigiosissime università degli Stati Uniti. Infatti Abdiweli ha conseguito il suo MA a Harvard, il suo PhD all'Università di George Mason University, e quindi attualmente è Associate Professor alla Niagara University di New York State. Queste le sue credenziali, diciamo così, accademiche. In realtà poi il suo compito in questo momento è quello di lavorare per la Somalia, cercando insieme agli altri responsabili e membri del suo governo di risolvere quelli che noi conosciamo, i problemi molto seri di questo paese. Spero che qui in Italia abbia trovato e trovi ancora, domani incontrerà il nostro Primo Ministro, trovi nel mondo politico italiano il sostegno e l'appoggio che noi tutti ci auguriamo che l'Italia voglia continuare a dare alla Somalia. Questa sera parlerà per noi sul tema Good Institutions are a Prerequisite for a Better Somalia. Quindi non mi trattengo oltre e do la parola al Primo Ministro. Grazie per essere qui.
Thank you, Professor. It's a pleasure to be here with you in this premier institution. And today, I will not talk about piracy, I will not talk about famine, and I will not talk about the Shabab. I will talk about institutions, the importance of institutions for a better Somalia. Somalia is where it's today because of the collapse of the institutional framework that should have guided that country. So we say in Somalia, it's all about institutions. The institutional settings within which economic policies are formulated are of crucial importance, and the quality of these institutions can be the primary source of the differences among countries. Poor institutions interfere with economic growth by inducing economic agents to engage in redistributive politics rather than economic activity with lower economic returns. Poor institutions encourage diversion of a production and therefore reduces the level of economic activity. many countries that are rich in natural resources, such as Nigeria, Trinidad, and Venezuela, for example, have done badly in terms of economic growth because natural resources suffer from a common pool problem. In the absence of well-defined and protected property rights, natural resources can be exploited by a number of political interest groups. Poor countries tend to have unreliable legal systems, corrupt governments, and insecure property rights. The lack of the security of property rights also prevents poor countries from acquiring the badly needed advanced, expensive technology available in developed countries. So the question is, does the nature of the political regime matter, or is it all about institutions? Institutional scholars argue that the quality of institutions matter more than the type and the nature of the political regime. They suggest that institutions will have a lasting impact irrespective of the country's political orientation. Dictatorships with good institutions, such as Singapore and Chile under Pinochet, succeeded economically, while many democracies are economically backward. Natural resource-rich countries, such as Nigeria, Venezuela, for example, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, have done poorly in terms of economic growth, while resource-poor countries in East Asia, such as Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, and South Korea, grew fast in the past 80 years. For example, South Korea had the same per capita income as Congo in the 1960s. Today, it is 10 times richer. And all indications suggest that it's all about the characteristics of their respective institutions. Although the quality of institutions can be of utmost importance in a country's economic trajectory, it might also be the case that the type of the political regime is also as important as institutions. There is a voluminous literature that democracy and all that it entails is a prerequisite for economic development. The proposition that democracy promoted growth is based on the premise that democratic regimes provide constitutional guarantees of the protection of property rights, a legal framework that facilitates exchange and enforce contracts. Proponents of this idea suggest that democratic processes and the existence of fundamental civil rights and political freedoms create an environment conducive to investment and the requisite incentives to undertake risky economic activity. The economic collapse of the socialist totalitarian regimes in the early 1990s and their shift toward democratic free market system supports this idea. Now, the question is, as good institutions are a prerequisite for a better Somalia. It's very likely that the transition in Somalia from authoritarianism and civil war to a broad-based democracy will not be easy. How successful Somalia will be will depend on the institutions established and the policies followed. Although many external factors outside the control of the Somalis political elites will affect the outcome, I will emphasize those institutions and economic policies which I think are under the purview of the Somalia's political leaders and which I think will contribute to the consolidation of the transition and to good economic and political performance. Chief among them are political freedom, civil liberty, economic freedom, judicial efficiency, the rule of law, political credibility, stable economic policies, transparent political system, decentralization of power, and accountable and responsive state institutions. I believe guaranteeing freedom, formulating credible and stable policies, and establishing transparent, decentralized, and accountable state institutions will determine the outcome of Somalia's political and economic future. I will start with the rule of law. Somalia was lacking the rule of law for the last 21 years. It became the center of lawlessness, anarchy, and violence. The rule of law is important for Somalia's future and to take Somalia to the next level. The rule of law in any given country reflects the degree to which the citizens of that country are willing to accept the established institutions to make and implement laws. It also indicates the extent to which countries have sound political institutions, strong courts, and orderly succession of powers. A good measure of how reliable a country's legal system is the extent to which a government enforces the rules codified in their charters and constitutions. Second, freedom. The most important thing that a government can give to its own people is to protect and endow its own people with their God-given freedoms. Of fundamental importance are political freedom and civil liberty. Whether a government provides political freedom to its citizens will depend on how it responds to the following questions. Is the head of the state elected through free and fair election? Are legislative representatives, means the parliament, elected through free and fair elections? Are there fair electoral laws, fair polling, and honest tabulation of ballots? Do the people organize freely in different political parties or other political groupings of their choice? Is there significant opposition vote and realistic possibility to gain power through elections? Does the country have the right of self-determination and its citizens free from any kind of domination? Do cultural, ethnic, religious, and other minority groups have reasonable self-determination? Is the political power really decentralized? In addition to the political freedoms, the civil liberties of the citizens should also be protected. Among the other things, the following questions also address the extent to which citizens fully enjoy liberties of civilized societies. Is there open public and private discussion? Is there freedom of assembly and demonstration? Is there freedom of political organization? Are citizens equal under the law and have access to an independent, non-discriminatory judiciary? Is there a protection from imprisonment and exile? Are there free and independent media, literature, and other cultural expressions? Are there free trade unions and peasant organizations or equivalents? Are there free professional and other private organizations? Are there free business cooperatives? Are there free religious institutions? Are there personal and social freedoms such as freedom of movement, choice of residence, and choice of citizens to engage of marriage? Is there equality of opportunity? And finally, is there a freedom from extreme government indifference and corruption? Economic policy. Another important factor that affects the success of the country's future state is the quality of the government's economic policies, fiscal, monetary, and trade policies. Will affect the economic environment in which economic activity takes place. One of the fiscal parameters that are considered to have a negative impact on development is the size of the government. Negative. It is therefore necessary to have a small but efficient government. This will minimize the habit of depending the government for the things that people can do for themselves. If you create a government big enough to give you everything you need, it will be a government big enough to take everything you have. The future government of Somalia should not fall into the trap that the size of your bureaucracy is a reflection of your power. How about trade policy? The Somali economy should be open and should follow an outward-looking strategy. Openness is an important determinant of economic development. In terms of the monetary policy, the most important thing the Somali government should do is to protect the value of the Somali shilling. How about credibility and transparency? The future Somali governments should be credible and transparent. Credibility can be provided not by decree, but by enforcement of the law of the land and abiding by it. In other words, you earn credibility when the government enforces the rules and is bound by them. Just having free elections and winning it does not guarantee you credibility. You have to earn it, and the biggest obstacle to political credibility is an executive with excessive discretionary powers. Therefore, the government should be frugal with its discretionary powers. The government should also be transparent. And to be transparent, it should allow the full freedom of the press and the mass media. Transparency allows the government to sustain its political future. It will allow the government to build a power base not based on clients, not based on clans and individuals, but on grassroots support. Freedom and good economic policies coupled with transparency and political credibility will guarantee a political success and acceptance from the masses. Decentralization of power. It's imperative that the power of the state is divided and should not be concentrated in the hands of one individual, one entity, one city, and obviously in Somalia, one clan. In addition to horizontal separation of powers, the power of the state should also be vertically divided. The idea of decentralization is to establish different hierarchical levels and distribute the power of the state in a way that creates mutual dependence. By sharing the legislative and enforcement powers with lower levels of government, decentralization will also reduce the pressure on the government to deliver and will allow it to deflect criticism. By decentralizing, you are not only sharing the power with lower level groups, but also the responsibility and the blame that comes with it. In conclusion, many empirical results from different countries, for example, reveal that countries with high levels of economic growth are characterized by high levels of judicial efficiency, low levels of corruption, effective bureaucracy, sound economic policies, transparent and decentralized political system, and protected private property, among others. The results also indicate that freedom is important for economic development. Economic and political freedoms are symptomatic of good institutions. They go hand in hand, suggesting that freedom can only be sustained in an environment of high institutional quality. Somalia has a window of opportunity to put the future path into a good start. Let the journey begin with institutional framework that will guarantee the sovereignty of the Somali citizen, and I hope the transition to a solid democracy will soon generate substantial economic outcomes for the people of Somalia. Thank you.
Penso che l'intervento del Primo Ministro ci abbia dato delle linee molto chiare, piene di speranza e ovviamente condivisibili. Il problema è vedere se e quando e come si riusciranno a realizzare concretamente nella realtà somala. Naturalmente io credo che il Ministro sia disponibile a rispondere a interventi, a domande.
Sure.
Certo, lo so. E quindi apriamo subito al pubblico per interventi. Il dottor Malesani, prego. Se vieni qui. Sì.
No, in Somali.
My response, my response will depend on how I understand your question also.
No, è molto semplice. Molte grazie del quadro che ci ha dato sulle istituzioni e sulla necessità di avere quanto prima un quadro di pace e fermo sul piano istituzionale. Le istituzioni trovano fonte e riferimento nella Costituzione. È importante che la Costituzione, che so che è uno degli obiettivi che voi state perseguendo, è vicina, ma su questo le volevo chiedere se ci poteva dare qualche indicazione su quello che state lavorando e questo termine che ci coinvolge molto, il termine federalismo. Federalismo può essere considerato da molti punti di vista. Il federalismo può essere autonomia ad alcuni territori. Il federalismo significa tener riferimento alle tribù, ai clan. Federalismo significa in qualche modo considerare la realtà che oggi abbiamo in Somalia. Oggi abbiamo una realtà in cui ci sono degli stati, c'è Mogadiscio, ma poi ci sono alcuni che si dichiarano stati come il Somaliland o come Puntland o come tante altre realtà, alcuni addirittura ridicoli, piccolissimi, che fanno ridere quasi, però ci sono delle realtà che sono forti, che sono in particolare il Somaliland, il Puntland, l'Alto Giuba, il Mugdud. Ecco, come si pone, Primo Ministro, il suo governo nei confronti di queste realtà?
Sure.
You can translate, please.
Yes, I understand. Yes, yeah. Okay. Many proponents believe that federalism perpetuates regionalism and clanism. It's a fear that we Somalis have. However, Somalis know one thing, that centralization of power failed them. For example, in 1991, when Mogadishu collapsed, every other city in the country also collapsed. That was not necessary. Why, when Mogadishu collapsed, why Baydaba has to collapse? Why Kismaayo has to collapse? Why Bur'a has to collapse? Why Hargeisa has to collapse? Because of the centralization of power. So we don't know what the federalism holds for us, but Somalis know that centralization of power in one city, in one entity, in one individual has failed them. But the question is, why federalism? What's the concept behind federalism? Government, as we all know, has and should be the only entity that has monopoly power on violence. Is that right? the only entity that should have monopoly power on violence. But we have to constrain that power to protect the freedom and the sovereignty of the individual. And how will you do that? By separating the powers horizontally: legislative, executive, and judiciary. But people said that's not good enough. The power of the state should also be vertically divided: federal, state, local. So the concept itself, the ultimate objective of federalism, is to protect the sovereignty of the individual and to deny one entity, one individual, one city, one group to exert too much power. I know now in Somalia people misunderstood what federalism all means. Now you have all these small cities claiming they are federal states. Right? So if Dick and Harry in somewhere says, I'm the president of so and so, the president of this state, you know, and they are in Islay or in London or in New York, you know, that's not what federalism is all about. That's not what regionalism is all about. Okay? But Somalis have decided to have a federal state. So let them practice it. If it also fails as it has failed us, as centralism has failed us, then we have to look for something else. But yeah, but at this moment, that's why we opted for the for federalism. Yeah. Federalism. Of course. Yes. Sure. Yeah, of course. We will, I think, on February 9, we will have a conference in Garowe, in Puntland, called Garowe 2, and we will address that issue. The Constitution and Constitutional Conference in Garowe, which will also address the issue of federalism. So it will be codified in the Constitution. Of course, it does.
Io parlo italiano perché ci sono i giornalisti italiani anche in sala, per cui dobbiamo facilitare il lavoro. Galabonaksen, io volevo chiedere due elementi. Uno è come il suo governo, Primo Ministro, vuole contrattare con Al-Shabaab, perché noi sappiamo che Al-Shabaab più della metà del paese gestiscono loro, occupano loro. Fare la guerra perenne con altri somali non ci aiuta se si può trovare una via del dialogo. Che intenzione ha lei, il suo governo, a dialogare con Al-Shabaab a fine di rinunciare alla guerra contro il suo governo? Il secondo domanda è: noi sappiamo che c'è un'opportunità molto importante per i somali, per la Somalia, e questo importante guiderà istituzioni di transizione a cui lei rappresenta, e che Londra c'è 23 febbraio, conferenza di Londra. Questa conferenza sappiamo, abbiamo trovato sull'internet che ci sono varie proposte. E queste proposte prevedono di mettere Charter 7 delle Nazioni Unite, una sorta di amministrazione fiduciaria light in Somalia. Lei ha convinto il governo italiano di rinunciare a questa proposta? Grazie.
Okay, the first one. Yeah. Yeah, well, family. And let me talk about the issue of Shabab and the dialogue with Shabab. I stated many times, and I will repeat it again and again, that my government is ready to talk with Al-Shabaab as long as they renounce violence. Two things. We have to understand with Somalis that you cannot reach peace through violence. Violence begets violence. Violence breeds violence. So, on one hand, you have to have credible force to make sure that the other side accepts peace. But you don't have to use force. And you cannot reach peace through violence. That's us. Al-Shabaab also to have understand one thing. They have to understand that they cannot reach their political ends through violence. So if they understood that they cannot reach their political ends through violence, and we as the government understand that we cannot reach peace through violence, then we can sit and talk and have a dialogue. And so, I'm ready to sit with them. Which other side? I said they have to understand that they cannot reach their political ends with violence. They cannot get to the power with violence. You have to understand that. So the government should on one hand have a credible force that will inculcate in the hearts of Al-Shabaab that they will not reach their political ends through violence. And we, as a government, should understand that you can never reach peace through violence. Because using more force, more violence, will create a cycle of violence. Okay? So we have to minimize the use of force as much as we can. But at the same time, as a government, you have to do what you have to do. About the London conference, to be honest, I am skeptical, as you are, about the London conference. But we have to accept what the British tell us in good faith. Although sometimes you cannot trust the British. And I have seen what they told us when we ask what is the expected outcome of this conference. Because when I'm going and attending a conference in London, I have to understand, as the political leader of Somalia, what will be the outcome of that conference for Somalia? I have to know. What the British told us is that this London conference has only one objective, and the objective is to galvanize the international support and international attention for the cause of Somalia. That's what they told us. And in good face value, I will accept that. I have seen all the internet, in the internet, all the non-papers by the Italians, by the British, and by others. But we are in the 21st century, and we are vigilant. And even if they entertain that idea, Somalis will not accept that. Of course, we will not accept that. So that's nonsense. And now, after I met with the foreign minister of Italy, and I met other government officials here, and I will meet the prime minister tomorrow, they convince us that they will support our objectives in that conference. And as a government, we want the London conference to complement the roadmap, to support the roadmap. We don't want the London conference to be a parallel process of the roadmap. We will not accept that. It has to complement and support the roadmap. And I think some of you might know about the roadmap. It's a document that we think and we wish will take Somalia from transition to a permanent governance. Yeah.
Aspetta, if you can. Vieni al microfono.
I will speak in English
Okay.
because I have just come back this morning from the States, which I thought that the conference was about the Somali crossroads. That's the conference that I have just attended in Ohio University, in which many Somali people came, and we basically talk about the situation of Somalia. Because it seems to me and to us, I mean, I'm a medical doctor, and it seems that everything is some sort of schizophrenic. I mean, I don't understand anything, because in one part, there is a government which is supposed to be, there is supposed to be some transition, there is supposed to be, it's called a transitional federal government. I don't see any federation, any transition to end. So it's an internally displaced government. It's situated in Mogadishu. Its outreach is very complicated, and we all know it. I mean, we're not telling each other something which doesn't exist. Now, the roadmap have been signed by some groups of the Somali political people. The Al-Shabaab is not one of the signatories of the roadmap. Somaliland is not the signature of the roadmap, and I am somebody who is specialized in population distribution, and if I look at it, there is a percentage of the population which is not involved in this. Now, we have told each other many times that this government is going to talk about the population, about the people, to reach them out. Now, what we have only, I asked this question when Formaggio was here, I asked when Omar Abdirashid was here, and I'm asking also to you. The thing is, we cannot repeat the same thing all the time. We need something different, because there is a territorial integrity, there is Islamism, there is a clan-based political representation. These three elements, this is the argument that I discussed when I was there in Ohio, are the three critical issues to deal with. So how are we going to deal with each one of them? The problem is the three are territorial integrity, Islamism, and clan-based political representation. So without dealing these three issues, we cannot talk about sustainable future development of the country. When you say integrity, territorial integrity, as far as I am concerned, Somaliland is in it. And we Somali are not able even to go and talk to them. We wanted the British people to bring the Somaliland on the table. Instead of saying the Prime Minister of Somalia have been in Hargeisa for 2 months to convince the people of Somaliland to sit down together with us and see what we have to do together. Because the problem is that the territorial integrity of Somalia there are some theories that there is this balkanization going on. Now we Somalis will say that we don't want it, but there are two countries which are, their militaries are in the country. So we need to sort of talk about this, I think. And we had a proposal in Ohio, which seems that many Somalis have agreed. We discussed it for 2 days and I think it's, if we wanted to see Somali-owned proposals, we need to make Somali-owned assessment and outreach and talk to the people of Somalia from Borama till Kismaayo, one by one, and then come up with something which can be applied to the country. Thank you.
Thank you for your passion for Somalia, and thank you for your good questions. you said the transition. I don't see transition ending. The transition will end. And the roadmap is the vehicle for ending the transition, this transition. I, as an Abdiweli, I have one objective, come August 2012. And I have to ask myself this question. Is Somalia better in August 2012 than you found out in June 2011? My objective is Somalia to be better in August 2012 than when I came assuming this responsibility. That's my number one objective. One. Second, the transition will end. Drafting and finalizing the constitution and ratifying it, not by referendum because we don't have enough security and we don't have census. We will ratify the constitution through Constituent Assembly. So drafting the constitution and ratifying it, selecting a new parliament, a better parliament, a more quality parliament, and having a new political dispensation, new leaders in August 2012, will take Somalia from a transition to a permanent governance. And that is the objective that we have, and that is what the roadmap is all about. We have timelines and we have deadlines to meet all these requirements if you read the roadmap. The roadmap is nothing else but composed of 4 things. Number 1 is security, because you have to secure the country. So security, security, security is very important. 2, political outreach and reconciliation. When I assumed this responsibility in June 2011, there was no reconciliation and there was no political outreach. I went to Puntland, the president went to Puntland, I went to Galmudug, and we are trying to reach, the government has to reach the people. Now we have established steering committees composed of senior ministers and MPs. Why? Because we want the ministers and the MPs to go to the people, to talk to them. They represent people. They're in the government because they represent regions, districts, clans. They have to go back to them. So the political outreach and reconciliation is going on in full gear. And as recently as 2 weeks ago, I was in Beledweyne when it was liberated from Al-Shabaab. Third, as I said, drafting and finalizing the constitution and reforming the parliament. And that's also going on. And we are meeting all the deadlines and benchmarks. And finally, good governance. Fighting corruption, fighting malfeasance, and establishing institutions, good institutions that will, it takes time. Building institutions, gaining credibility, all this takes time. It's an ongoing process. So 3 of them are ongoing processes. For example, good governance, security, political outreach and reconciliation. These are ongoing, they will be with us for the rest of our political history. But there are 2 issues that cannot wait. At that, these have deadlines, and we have to meet these deadlines. And what are they? It is the constitution building and reform of the parliament. We need these 2 elements for the next political dispensation if you want and I want the transition to end. I will say also a few words about the territorial integrity of Somalia. Somalis, we have a policy, and that policy is the territorial integrity of Somalia is a sacrosanct. But at the same time, you cannot force people. You cannot force Somaliland, for example, to choose Somalia by force. No. you have to convince them. Somaliland has to understand that they will be better off being with Somalia than not being part of Somalia. You cannot use violence. Violence fails us. I cannot talk about Islamism because I don't know about it. I know nothing about Islamism. So my friends will talk about it. Clan-based society. Of course, Somalis are made of clans. So you cannot ignore clan. But you cannot use clanism to build institutions. Look, government is a social contract between individuals. It's a contract between me and you. And each of us should have a mutual benefit, should see a mutual benefit by having this contract with each other, whether it's based on region, or a clan, or something else. Thank you.
And I just would like to add one thing in terms of you mentioned about to reach out the people, but to be fair with the current government, since the Prime Minister Abdiweli came to power in June, he has achieved a milestone in terms of political outreach. 6 months ago, it was impossible for Puntland president to come to Mogadishu or the President Sheikh Sharif to go to Puntland. And now the relationship between the two are very good. Also, other parts, Al-Sunnah wal-Jama'ah and Galmudug and major parts of Somali stakeholders are coming together for the sake of Somalis. So this is the first time we've seen Somali ownership, Somalis discussing about their own issues. Within 3 days, between 4 to 6, Somalis come up with a roadmap without outside interference. So it seems that we go into the right direction. Also, the government has achieved in terms of security. Now Mogadishu is free, and we have done a lot on that angle. With regards to the other side of reaching out to the people, to be fair, the current Prime Minister on a number of times has attended town hall meetings where the people in Mogadishu discussing about the government priorities and addressing or taking questions from them, which shows the transparency and the accountability to the people. Also, the Prime Minister instructed all the ministers to go on public, either to radios or TVs, to discuss about the progress of their own ministries. Again, this is another way of involving or community engagement with the people. That's again is to reaching out to the people. So we are doing a lot on that. Also, in November, we held another consultative meeting with civil society. So again, that was part of engaging with in all segments of the society. And now Garowe 2 conference that the Prime Minister was talking about, and other conferences that are coming up, we are including with Somalis in the diaspora. So it seems that we're doing a lot. So that's why we need Somalis in the diaspora to focus on and to help the government in terms of to ending the transition and to moving on. With regards to the Islamists, at the moment the Prime Minister said we have moved long way. Warlordism era has finished. Clanism or fighting between the clans or civil war is an era at the moment. And also people who are using the Islam the wrong way, I think that is coming to an end as well. We have seen the beginning of the end of Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab are using the religion in a way that is an Islamic way, because Islam is peace. So we're supposed to be expecting them to accept the peace but at the moment I think the era of those people who use it, the religion to their own advantage or benefit is coming to an end at the moment. Thank you.
Barasho wanaagsan, mahadsanid imaatinkaaga. A proposito della trasparenza che lei, con cui lei aveva iniziato nella formulazione delle istituzioni in Somalia, volevo farle una semplice domanda: se è nella natura dei somali essere contrari alle libertà individuali. Faccio un semplice esempio, quello del Somaliland, che ha arrestato tutti i giornalisti che si erano espressi non in maniera desiderata. Le faccio l'esempio anche del Puntland, che ha arrestato i giornalisti, sia quelli corrispondenti esteri o ad altri. E quindi la trasparenza sì è importante, però cosa ne pensa lei, se fa parte della natura dei somali stessi, quello di rifiutare la libertà? Grazie. A Mogadiscio è stato assassinato un giornalista, l'ultimo giornalista.
Thank you for your good question. I understand that, you know, remember we have 20 years of dictatorship, followed by 20 years of anarchy and lawlessness. You know, it will take a while, it will take a time to understand democracy, to understand the importance of freedom, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, freedom of associations. These are the things that these countries, for example, the Western countries or citizens have taken for granted. Thank you. But that culture to entrench will take a while. Okay? It will take a while. Why? Because probably the rulers of Puntland, Somaliland, and some other parts of the country are from this old guard who are probably allergic to criticism, allergic to, and so therefore, the new generations, probably the diaspora, and the new generations of Somalis will hopefully will have a different tack on the issue of freedom and liberty. Transparency is very important. It's good for the government. Criticism, political criticism, is a way of correcting the government to the right path. Okay? You have to understand that way. Okay? But as I said, we don't have a culture of accepting criticism. So therefore, this will take a while. We have a long way to go. But is it important? Transparency is important? Of course it does. It's very important.
Scusi, lei giustamente ripete che c'è bisogno di tempo per questi processi, ma è proprio il tempo che qui manca, nel senso che mancano 6 mesi ad agosto in Italia e penso anche in Somalia. Allora, cioè i punti che sono stati fissati nella roadmap, fissare una Costituzione, ratificarla, selezionare un Parlamento che sia più rappresentativo e nel contempo ripristinare la situazione della sicurezza e magari avviare anche un processo di riconciliazione. Sono tanti obiettivi, diciamo, è ambizioso, diciamo, un eufemismo. La seconda domanda era, lei ha ribadito molto appunto il concetto di libertà di informazione. La libertà di informazione passa anche per la possibilità dei giornalisti appunto di operare senza possibilmente essere uccisi, come è successo 2 giorni fa a Mogadiscio che voi dite di avere sotto controllo almeno per l'80% da 3 o 4 mesi a questa parte. Mi chiedevo intanto se c'erano notizie su un'eventuale inchiesta che è stata avviata. E il terzo punto, che pure c'era, ecco, per uscire da Mogadiscio invece, la notizia è di oggi, ieri-oggi, ci sono centinaia di uomini armati che hanno passato la frontiera dall'Etiopia nella regione di Gedo con mezzi pesanti, blindati. Ora, a differenza del Kenya, che ha dimostrato di voler far rientrare la sua operazione, la sua offensiva militare sotto il quadro, diciamo, il cappello di AMISOM, il governo di Addis Abeba non ha chiesto niente di tutto questo. Voi che cosa ne pensate della presenza di etiopici a Gedo? Grazie.
haddaan fahmay hore waxa weeye inuu roadmap ambitious yahay timeka
aad haysata waa yari
sure
6 bilood
yeah
waxaad ka hadashay iskaashi oo ku qoranana
waa badan yihiin yes
sidee la isu
kow
kaas waa midka kaleeto waxa weeye
saxaad waa taas
midda kale waxa weeye xorriyatul qowlka
aya
dadka journalistaha
xamar lagu dilay
xamar baa lagu dilay hargeysa lagu xiray puntland baa lagu xiray
the same question
ma ogi inaad baaris furteen iyo in kale
tan ugu dambayso oo shabeelle dilkii ahaa daa ka warqabtay in journalistihii la dilay in baaris lagu bilaabay ciddii ka dambaysay
statementya laga soo saaray
yeah
yes 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 and finally Ethiopia so galitaanka
tan saddexaad
anaa ka jawaabay
so waxbay ku darsanaysaa
Vuole agganciare alla domanda che ha fatto la signorina. Cioè io volevo chiedere, il Riso ha detto che since Mr. Abdiweli, cioè quando il signor Primo Ministro è Abdiweli, noi siamo qui da 20 anni e ne abbiamo visti di presidenti e di primi ministri. Il ministro che veniva diceva questa volta ci sono io che cambierò qualcosa, oppure da quando ci sono io è cambiato tanto. Ma potete immaginare in 20 anni quanti primi ministri noi abbiamo visto che ci hanno detto la stessa cosa? Questa è la prima domanda che faccio a voi, perché ormai noi siamo stanchi di sentire questi ritornelli, qualcosa cambierà, qualcosa si farà di meglio, la storia cambia e via di seguito, per 20 anni non è cambiato niente. L'altra cosa è che dagli ultimi rapporti di fonti proprio delle Nazioni Unite, gruppo del monitoraggio delle Nazioni Unite, ci risulta che da 9.000 soldati addestrati dagli Stati Uniti e dall'Europa, il 90% sono passati con le loro armi al-Shabaab, agli al-Shabaab.
when not now when was that
Questo è un dato.
ma quando che è stato
quando è stato no
Qui c'è
the time
quando
when
more than 9,000 Somali troops of the United States and Europe has trained and equipped. Nearly 90% have deserted, in most cases taking their weapons with them.
when
Okay.
that is Somali Armed
Questo
Forces
è un rapporto che è stato fatto a settembre.
okay
va questo è
Di monitoraggio degli Stati Uniti.
no
Concetto.
okay
E se tutte le truppe che vengono addestrate, tutte le armi che vi vengono date, passano automaticamente al Shabaab. Cioè non serve a niente chiedere qua agli americani o agli europei che vengono addestrati, che vengono date a voi delle armi, perché tanto queste armi e queste truppe passeranno agli al-Shabaab.
sure
Cioè,
okay
questo
okay let me try to respond the way I can to the following questions. The roadmap. Yes, the roadmap is a very ambitious document. Why? Because of the tasks at hand. But as I said, the roadmap is composed of 4 things: security, good governance, political outreach, and reconciliation. These 3 will be an ongoing processes. We don't have a timeline and deadlines for it. Reconciling the communities will take a while. Political outreach and reconciliation will take a while. Good governance and good institutions, establishing good institutions, will take a while. They are ongoing processes. Eh? They will stay with us. And the same thing for security itself. But the 2 things that cannot wait is the drafting a constitution for the country and also the reform of the parliament, so that we have a good political dispensation in August 2012. Change of leadership, change of governance, and moving from transition to a permanent governance. I guarantee you that. Okay. God willing, inshallah. The issue of freedom, yes, of course. Not only the last journalist killed, but so many journalists lost their lives in Somalia for the last few years. He's the last one, but he's not the only one. And of course, this process that we are going through, okay, many people will die for noble causes. Okay? So freedom, democracy, all these are good noble causes, and some people will die for that cause. Okay? As far as the Ethiopians is concerned, look, we Somalis, we have to go to the mirror and we have to look ourselves in the mirror. The Somali problem is no more confined to Somalia. The Somali problem is no more only a Somali problem. It's a regional problem, it's a global problem. Why Kenya intervene in Somalia? Because we want Shabab and pirates were going to Kenya abducting people. Some of those abducted were helping Somalis inside Kenya, in Dadaab, the biggest refugee camp in the world. It's the, I think, the fifth or the fourth largest city in Kenya. It's a Somali refugee camp, Dadaab. And Shabab and others were going and abducting people from inside Kenya. Kenya is a country that depends on tourism. When they abducted people from Lamu, 90% of hotel reservations were cancelled. So Shabab hit Kenya where it hurts the most. Therefore, they have to act. And we, the government, could not prevent that happening. The same thing for Ethiopia. Okay? These are our neighbors. We have borders with them. We have common enemy, and therefore we have a common strategy. I am not the one who's shying away, saying why Ethiopia is coming. We call Ethiopia to come in. Yeah, we did. I did. And I'm telling you now, I did. Why? Because we have a common enemy, and we should have a common strategy to defeat this menace. To defeat this menace. Al-Shabaab, people, that statistics, I don't have it. All I can say is since I joined the government back in November 2011, there are Shababs coming in to us.
2010.
2010, I'm sorry, 2010. There are Shabab, many Shababs are coming to us, not the other way around. I'm talking about since 2000, since I joined the government, the previous government of my friend Farmacho in 2010, there are more Shababs coming in than TFG churches joining Shabab. This is the fact. Okay? So that might be the date of that article may be earlier, but
September 2011.
That's far from the facts. So we don't have that facts. Thank you. Yes, please.
Potrei anche parlare così normalmente che sempre.
Sì, sì.
Si alza la voce.
Che fanno
Sì, sì.
registrazioni.
Ah, registrazione.
Lo registrano.
Ah, sì. Ma la voce arriva?
Sì, sì.
Marka ugu horeysa horta Ra'iisul Wasaarihii iyo dowladda iyo madaxda martida sharafta leh baan salaamaya. Rivolgo un saluto cordiale al Primo Ministro e i rappresentanti dello Stato e i diplomatici che sono presenti qui. E dopo di questo vorrei fare alcune considerazioni. Io non ho nessuna domanda. سؤال ما قبل لكن وهي أربعة يرير برا بينا وحتى
Sure.
بريمو توتي Somalia horta dhib waa ku jirtaa dhibna waa soo martay cioè la Somalia è in grosse difficoltà e ne ha passato di tante di difficoltà però waxaa jirta raja jirta anche italiano.
tutte e due.
Certo. لكن رجع قصة c'è una speranza. La speranza dove la vedi? rajada xaggeed ka arkaysa rajada anigu waxaan uga jeedaa marba haddaad u jeedo madax dhalinyaro ah oo siyaasiyiin ah oo maaragtay maanta wadankii matalaysa c'è la speranza è nei giovani, primo ministro giovane, quello che c'era prima i giovani, cioè i giovani politici che guidano oggi la Somalia, la speranza sta lì. marba haddaysan jirin inootaabol iyo kaabaqawil iyo odayaashii mataqaanaa dad hargabi jirasi nel momento che non ci sono più i notavoli e capiclani e ci sono dei giovani, quindi la speranza c'è per la Somalia. Detto questo, vorrei toccare alcuni punti fondamentali. Cioè fondamentale quello per quanto riguarda il Shabab. Io waxaan dhihi lahaa Shabab si fiican looga fiirsado. Cioè bisogna riflettere per quanto riguarda il concetto di Shabab. maxaa jira Shabab ma ahan una organizzazione o siyaasada dad siyaasad doonaya, dad dowlad doonaya, non è che vogliono governo o vogliono fare la politica, no, è una organizzazione delinquenti, criminale, la stessa cosa, sono dei criminali, peggio di quelli che abbiamo dei nazisti. Waa urur dhiigyacaga oo dagaal iyo halaag mooyaan wax kale maskaxdiisa ugu jiro. Infatti haddaad fiiriso tutto quel periodo che loro lottano per 10-20 anni che lottano, kama maqlaysid afkooda che vogliono fare un governo, che vogliono fare un'istituzione, o non ho mai detto, si sono pronunciati che vogliono fare un governo, che vogliono governare, ma soltanto di uccidere, massacrare, ammazzare. Ecco, questo è il problema. Per cui, visto che sono prettamente criminali di sanguinari, io non riesco a capire come si fa ad arrivare a tavola a discutere coloro che tagliano la testa alla gente. Ecco, se a meno che, ammesso, haddayba dhacdo inay maalin toobad keenaan oo yidhaahdaan war waa gafnay, abbiamo sbagliato, abbiamo ma questo sicuramente no, veramente guarda, è difficile, cioè nessuna religione cristiana, musulmana, buddista trovi questo concetto di tagliare la testa alla gente. E l'indomani ti pulisci, ti lavi e dici eccomi le alternative. È un po' difficile, guardate sì, ma in casa mi sono la felice. Quindi bisogna riflettere bene. Secondo concetto che voglio toccare è il problema del federalismo. Benissimo, che ci siano autonomie regionali, amministrazione regionale, ma che questo assolutamente non deve centrare sul tribù. Ecco, questo clan e tribù, assolutamente. Questo è difficile. Il giorno in cui Mahdi è il federalismo del Camil, io tribù, o alla fine della Somalia, questo è la fine della Somalia. Quando noi traduciamo il federalismo come tribù e clan, quello è la fine della Somalia.
Il Parlamento com'è?
Quello non lo tocchiamo, quello lo tocchiamo.
جمعة
marka un punto è questo, waa in iyadana si fiican midda ku xigta waxa weeye markaad fiiriso su-aal yar oo markaas aan kusoo rabay inaan kusoo gabagabeeyo. No, anzi un altro punto, si dice che la Somalia c'è la guerra tribale, ci sono delle tribù, ma signori questo non è vero, non è vero. Allora aspetta, voglio waxaan leeyahay Soomaaliya dagaal qabiil ma aha, waxa weeye dagaal dei gruppi mafiosi. Perché? Sa perché? Perché dadweynaha Soomaaliya 90% waa dadka baadiyaha degan, cioè il 90% della popolazione somaliana è nelle zone rurali che non c'entra la città, per cui dove c'è xaggee ka socotaa fidnadu, magaalooyin ka socotaa, magaalooyinka yaa degan, chi sta nelle città? 0,1% della popolazione che hanno delle ambizioni poi o rabaan inay ama wasiir noqdaan ama ay baarlamaantaan noqdaan ama madaxweyne noqdaan, solo quelli. 0%. Allora non è vero quando si dice la Somalia c'è la guerra tribale, non esiste. Il filmato è magaalada iyo dadka raba inay madax noqdaan dadka raba. Quindi non c'è la guerra tribale in Somalia, c'è la guerra dei gruppi di interesse, dantooda wata oo raba inay qabiilka magaciisa ku qaraabtaan oo wax ku qaataan ayaa dagaalkooda maana shacbiga soo dagaal
Un fiume in piena come l'originale.
Allora, visto che l'amico mio mi ha detto di stringere, stringo,
Bravo.
e concludo con una domanda per il Primo Ministro. Haddii ay dhacdo in waddanka la dejiyo oo nabad dhacdo oo ripacificazione la chiaro, se ci arriveremo, sarà quando sarà, di una situazione di pace e tranquillità. Tra questo momento e quando si potrà votare direttamente, o la gente potrà direttamente potrà votare, quando tempo le immagini intercorre in tempo che markii waddanka dego nabada dhigo ilaa maalinta dadka loogu yeeri kari doono inuu codkiisa dhiibto intee u malaynaysaa tallaabo iyo steps tallaabooyinka loo baahan illo perché non è che direttamente si può dire la gente non sanno perché votare, non sanno tanto tempo io modalità sida bulgarica
Grazie.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you for your comments. It's I enjoy really your contribution and your comments, and they are worth taking, all of them. As far as the one man, one vote, voting. You know, Somalia has a tradition also of democracy. Although, yeah, not Basel democracy, but also we have 9 years of democracy too. Although it was not the type of democracy that we really wanted. So voting, going to the polls, is not strange to Somalis. But we forget that. It's been a while since we have done that. The reason, as I said, we are trying to ratify the Constitution through Constitutional Assembly is because ratified by referendum, first of all, needs security. So the whole country should be secure, under the control of the government. You know, even securing the country is not enough. Stabilizing it, pacifying it, will take a while. Then building peace committees, building local administrations, and then building regional and administrations will also take a while. So you need to move from this era of violence, the peace process that takes a while, and then after that, then you have to take a census, conduct a census, and then you have to ratify the Constitution, for example, by referendum. I believe that 20 years of anarchy, lawlessness, and violence is enough. And you know, as you said, the fighting in Somalia, the clan violence or clan conflict actually ended a long time ago. It was a political conflict, which then translated into a religious conflict. So now, Somalis, if you talk to people, to local people, they understood 20 years of lawlessness and violence and anarchy is enough. Enough is enough. As I always say, Somali people are sick and tired of always being sick and tired. They did, really. And I believe that I cannot say 5 years, I cannot say 10 years, but the Somali people are ready to move on. Really, they are really ready to move on. And hopefully it will not take a while. At least it will be in my lifetime.
Okay, excellent. Let me just add one. And no, let me just add one. Lul era DJ la stessa cosa. Non è vero. Io lo no, io lo conoscevo italiano benissimo, adesso l'ho dimenticato tutto. So, non è la stessa cosa. And let me tell you one thing. It's not the same. Since the Prime Minister came, Mogadishu is liberated. You know that. So that is facts. Also, what's facts now we've seen youths in Mogadishu coming to football tournament where the President and the Prime Minister go into the stadium and addressing to the public. It wasn't the case 6 months ago. Now we have seen people moving around in Mogadishu midnight. 6 months ago, that was impossible. So we need not to ignore the facts. The facts are there. There are improvements. La donne guidano, sì, in Mogadishu. Sì. So people are going to the beach nowadays. 6 months ago, that was impossible. So it's a day and night, the difference that you can see in 6 months. And we need to acknowledge as Somalis. Thank you.
Soltanto l'ultima domanda, perché poi il Primo Ministro ha degli impegni, appuntamenti successivi, quindi...
un'alternativa, una vita fra virgolette decente di quelle che ha, io credo che finché ci sarà questo bisogno dei nostri giovani avranno giovani a cercare. Quindi cosa noi stiamo facendo e cosa vorremmo fare per togliere, anche questo sarebbe secondo me un modo per
an alternative livelihood for Allah subhanahu. Thank you. Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. You know, very good question. And the people joining Shabab, kids joining Shabab, of course. There's I think 90% or 80% unemployment rate for the youth in Somalia. That creates hopelessness. And that sometimes, I think, maybe have driven some people to join the Shabab. You know, when people are desperate, they take desperate measures, desperate actions. Even also joining Shabab, or joining the piracy. It's an alternative livelihood for them. When they are unemployed, when they have no hope, then they will take their luck to the high seas. So, of course, we have to create alternative means or alternative livelihood for them. There are projects that we have now doing in Somalia, like cash for work or food for work and things like that, with the limited resources that we have. But more importantly, once you pacify the country, when security prevails in Somalia, once you establish back the institutions of governance in Somalia, then you create an environment conducive enough for economic activity to take place, so that you can create jobs for people, and that will take a while. That will take a time. And I agree with you that unless we create alternative livelihood for these kids, then all the things that you have mentioned will take place.
Can I have one word?
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Prime Minister, I wanted to say few words, not in relation to your lecture, which I find brilliantly written and presented. I find that the participants also, they played and very encouraging and very positive with their contributions they give. Questions, contributions, considerations, and comments, which was very good evening. My comments goes somehow back to the history. Sometime 70s, for the first time I met Melasani, the man with white hair sitting in front of me now. He was at that time young with different color of his hair. He was a man that the government of Italy at that time gave him the responsibility to help Somalia and Italy to have economic, human resource development cooperation. Lui era responsabile sul coordinamento dell'accordo bilaterale fra due paesi sull'istruzione superiore della Somalia, cioè stabilimento dell'Università Nazionale Somala, quale aveva cooperazione diretta con diverse università italiane. Era molto giovane, energico, credeva i rapporti e il significato di questi due popoli. Uno dei temi che ha portato nel nostro senato accademico in una giornata dove avevamo commissione mista italo-somala al hotel Giubba, presieduta da professore Stefanini. Io ero preside giovane di una delle facoltà assistite. Ho litigato con lui perché volevo fare un modo diverso e lui ha dimenticato che io ero preside. Si è nervosito e mi ha detto: tu esci fuori e io ho consentito dal cuore perché era molto sincero. Perché ero preside, ero un po'. Lì è stato introdotto un tema nuovo, salto di qualità, ti ricordi? Questo salto di qualità ha portato incremento delle istituti assistite di qui, questo istituto di qui che noi siamo. La laurea sulla lingua non c'era ancora a questo tempo. È stato introdotto la lingua italiana. La lingua italiana esistiva come un corso di 6 mesi per addestrare gli studenti somali che entravano alle varie facoltà. Ecco, allora abbiamo portato facoltà di lingua. Io sono veramente molto lieto e lo ringrazio molto al professoressa e al suo staff. Oggi, quando mi ricordo che noi avevamo circa 700 docenti, ricercatori somali in varie facoltà, non esistono oggi. Sono dispersi. L'unico sono dispersi.
Alcuni sono qui.
Ma non in territorio somalo. L'unico istituto che esiste oggi che specializza, che fa ricerca, studio della ricerca sulla Somalia, è l'unico che esiste. Lo ringrazio professoressa e il suo staff a nome del Primo Ministro e al Governo e al popolo somalo, professor Mansour, che era colonna e preside che ha prodotto diversi libri sulla lingua somala, moderna, traduzione con la lingua italiana. Di essere qui veramente sono molto orgoglioso. Grazie mille.
Grazie a tutti.
Lo ringraziamo.